Hello everyone, welcome to Tactica Imperialis and to today's video. Today is going to be my thoughts on the Warhammer Online Preview number 2, which happened yesterday at the time of recording this video, over the weekend by the time I get it released. So obviously the first preview happened last week. If you want to see my video on that, I will leave a link in the description. And we got a lot of really cool stuff. Fabius Bile, the new Lumineth Doom Cow, or the Battle Cattle, or whatever preferred name you have for it. And of course, Lion L. Johnson for the Horus Heresy. A lot of really cool stuff. And this show didn't quite go for the same scale, and I understand why. Now, I've seen and spoken to people who've said it felt very underwhelming. And I would be inclined to say that compared to the first preview, it definitely was. But, on the other hand, this was all supposed to happen at once. Bear in mind, this was the Adepticon show, and they've actually had to space it now over 3 or 4 shows. There's another show in 2 weeks, for example. So, all of this stuff was supposed to happen in a weekend at Adepticon. So if you're going to drop all the bombshells in the first show, it stands to reason, therefore, that not every show can do the same. Now, I'll admit, I think there was a slight bit of poor messaging in communicating how this show was going to be run, because we assumed this was going to be the only remaining show. We thought that this was going to be the second half of the Adepticon reveals, and this was going to be the end of that. It isn't. It's part 2 of 3 or 4. So, again, it just a slight bit of mixed messaging maybe got people's expectations a tad too high. But what they did show was very interesting, so let's dive in. We start off with Warhammer Age of Sigmar and with a little bit more Lumineth Realm Lords. No new miniatures. I was kind of expecting to see more Lumineth miniatures in terms of new releases, because at the moment the Lumineth roster stands at Spearmen, Archers, Cav, Stone Wardens, Stone Mage Teclis, Spirit of the Mountain, Stoneheart King, and the Light of Eltharion, where more than half of the roster is heroes and monsters. Now, there are factions like that, but given the whole multiple temples thing, I thought we'd have seen a little bit more unit-wise, but we haven't. They've obviously kept that back for later, but they have shown off the Lumineth Realm Lords starter box. I won't play the trailer, we'll be here for ages. It's a nice trailer though, not quite as memey as some of the ones from last week, but still good nonetheless. And what they've shown us is, well, this, and they then showed us the box contents as well. It's a really, really nice looking box with the Teclis image on the front, and it looks something like this in terms of contents. In fact, this isn't the entire contents. They haven't even put the full contents here. So, you get 10 of the Spearmen, the Wardens, including the unit champion, who's over here for some reason. You also get 5 of the Knights. You get the Light of Eltharion, which I still maintain is one of the best miniatures GW has ever designed. At least that's my personal opinion on the matter. You also get objective markers, a measuring ruler, which will probably be completely useless because it will be bendy, as well as some tokens, dice, war scroll and spell cards, and a combat gauge as well. It's a really good quality starter box, and also included in here is the AOS Core Rulebook, which is a very nice addition, and the limited edition Battle Tome. Now, they do say, I think, just beneath, I think? No, it's just above. So, yeah, here. So you've got cards for tracking spells, gem effect dice, tokens, and a combat gauge, and it's the only way to grab the limited edition Battle Tome. Right, okay, so I think I understand why this has happened. I'm guessing that limited edition codices and limited edition battle tomes are not selling on their own. They're not being perceived as good value by the consumer, so they're not buying them. So to incentivize them being purchased, they're lumping them in with the starter box. And in the case of the Lumineth, given their roster, I think they'll get away with it. Because everyone's probably going to need spearmen, and everyone's probably going to want cavalry, and the Light of Eltharion is the greatest miniature GW's ever produced. Maybe, probably not, but it's amazing nonetheless. And so I think they'll get away with it on this one. But if this practice continues, then I think there's something to be concerned about. Because with the Sisters of Battle, you had the limited edition codex inside the army starter box, which came out in advance of the main release, like this is. And then it came out separately when the main army was released. And I'm guessing it just didn't sell because everyone bought it in the army box. So, one to watch, I think. One to watch. But we also got a first look at the allegiance abilities of the Lumineth with a rule called Lightning Reactions. Now, if you're a High Elves player, like I was back in the old days of fantasy, you'll remember that Elves had always strikes first, which is exactly what it says in the tin. Irrespective of initiative, you went first, even if you were carrying things that made you always strike last, like great weapons, which made Swordmasters of Hoeth and White Lions of Grace utterly hilarious. Well, they've decided to rejig that into a new ability called Lightning Reactions. During the combat phase, when it is your turn, you can pick 2 eligible units to fight instead of 1. If you do so, they can fight one after the other in the order of your choice. So in essence, instead of being a you go, I go combat system, you've now got a you go, I go, I go, you go, I go, I go combat system, which is pretty nice if you can line it up correctly, because one of the most important things about elves is they hit quite hard and they're very good at fighting, but they're squishy. Really, really squishy. And so getting rid of that innate squishiness by just letting them kill things first is powerful. We saw with the Adepticon and their high tide ability where everyone gets always strikes first for a round. It's powerful. Adepticon is still one of the strongest armies in the game. And so I think this is a really cool idea, and it will also stay true to the Elven way by making the Lumineth quite a high skill faction. There'll be an army that you can win games with, and you'll do okay, because some of them will be powerful, some of the combos will be less powerful, probably like the Idoneth and the Daughters of Canar as well. But if you can line them up correctly, time your combats, and play the battle the way that you want to with synergy and timing and combos, they're gonna be vicious. Granted, this assumes that their War Scrolls and other abilities are any good, but they're elves. They can't really be that bad in terms of raw stat line, although they may be a bit overpriced. So we'll see how powerful the Lumineth end up being, but as an ability, I think this is really cool, and in the right hands, really dangerous. Though if you're a Slaanesh player, you get always strikes last, so it's maybe not as bad. Still, cool thing, and I quite like the idea of that. Then we got a little bit of Blood Bowl. They've revealed for Halfling teams and for Wood Elf teams a new Tree Man, which is one of yours, probably your heavy hitter in those armies. I think this is the Wood Elf variant, just judging by the hat. I think that's the Wood Elf variant. And then you've got the Halfling variant, including the Squirrel, which is apparently something of a mascot, Acorn, the Squirrel. Which is a cool thing. It's a nice miniature. It's very small compared to what we consider a tree man to look like nowadays, but that's mainly because all the Sylvaneth tree men are now tree lords or dryads, who are a lot smaller. So this sort of sits in between the two. Unfortunately, that probably means you won't be able to use it very much in your armies of Age of Sigmar, but Warhammer the Old World might get a use out of it. I'm sure there'll be plenty of converters looking to do something really neat with this miniature, though I'm nowhere near skilled enough to comment. The Horus Heresy got a little bit more as well. So for the Word Bearers, if you are a Word Bearers player, you've now got 2 new Praetors to lead your armies. One in power armor with a plasma pistol and a power sword, and one in Tartaros Terminator plate. It's not Cataphracti. What is it, Cataphracti? Oh, I'm rusty on my Terminator plate. I'm not sure which type of Terminator armor that is. It's probably Cataphracti, but I feel like I've painted armor like that, which was Tartaros, so sorry, I kind of suck at that. But they are very, very imposing miniatures. Like, they're very much going into the chaos side and the corrupted, demonic almost side of the Word Bearers. They're very much off the deep end at this point. And I've seen some people say that these are too 40k-ish, and I get that. I think that it is possibly a bit too far beyond what we sort of expect the word bearers to look like, with the exception of the Galvor back. Granted, you've got like Erebus, but I don't know. I think certain word bearers players who play theirs as Heresy era word bearers will love it. Crusade era word bearers players will get nothing from this. The fire effects are alright on the Terminator character. I think I slightly prefer the Terminator in terms of pose, but in terms of overall look, I prefer the one in power armor. But they're nice miniatures, and considering these would have just been snuck out alongside Lionel Johnson, well, word bearers players, count your blessings. And I suppose that all the other legions that don't yet have Praetors will get their Praetors in due course. Middle-earth is getting a new expansion pack, the Quest of the Ringbearer, which is very much narrative focused, talks about interlinked narrative missions, guiding the fellowship, or maybe creating your own custom fellowship if that's your thing. Admittedly, I'm not into Middle-earth as a setting or a game enough to really care, but it's a really cool idea, and custom fellowships, I'm sure many people have had some fun with that down the years. As well as a couple of new champions of Gondor who go along with the Faramir's Rangers. They're nice miniatures, though compared to the Aemir we looked at last week, they've got the sort of uncanny valley back in their faces again, though that may be rather in the paint job rather than the sculpt. I don't know, particularly the one on the left has got a bit of an uncanny valley to his face, and they're nice, but they've fallen into the Middle-earth trap that some miniatures have fallen into, but they're not bad at all. They're not bad at all. Just not for me, I'm afraid. Then we got a extended trailer for the Angels of Death animation series. Again, not going to play it here. A, because copyright strikes, and B, because my computer will chug like crazy. But I'll show you a few of the stills that they put up. So we see here, this is, I think, one of the Imperial ships, and they're fighting against the Tyranids, so they've got bioships as well. You've got this really stark art style with everything in black and white except for the red of the Blood Angels with their Thunderhawks and their Terminator plate. It's a really stark design, and I kind of dig it. Certainly I can see it not appealing to everybody, but I kind of dig it because it'll draw your eye to where the action's happening, that being the Space Marines 95% of the time. And obviously this is by the team or the individual working with GW, and the individual worked on Hell's Reach. So obviously some good stuff here. I'm not going to comment on the animation and the texture quality. I'm no expert, or the sound design. Though I will say, when this character started speaking, she's basically kind of the Lotara Sarin of the series, by the sounds of it. She's a shipmaster who gets thrust into command and goes across as a bit of a badass. But when she was speaking, it seemed like someone had just kind of dubbed it. It didn't feel as quite as organic in the sound design of the dialogue as perhaps, say, the Space Marines did. Her dialogue just sounded really laid over the top. Now, that might just be me listening for things that are not there, but I've watched the odd dub of things before, and you notice. And I feel like I heard it, it's like her voice was just sat there and it wasn't really blended with the ambiance quite right. That's really minor and petty coming from me. Again, you'd have to go and speak to proper animators and people working on this stuff to say, is it any good or not? It looks really pretty to me, and I think it will be excellent. The only question that remains is, how are they going to release it? Is it going to be a YouTube series? Is it going to be on a streaming service like Netflix? How are they going to release it? Because I think they sort of hinted in the stream chat that it was going to be episodic, and this space battle was kind of the middle of the series. So we'll see how it really comes out. Again, you've got that really bright red, some really nice stuff, and that is glorious, that space battle at destruction. And the bioships as well look absolutely gorgeous. They also talk about some other stuff that Storyforge were working on. Andy Smiley came back on the show, and we had this thing, a hyper-realistic Sister of Battle. Some people in my Snarkathon Discord chat were saying that this was almost like it had been built in maybe the Unreal game engine, or in a video game engine of some sort, particularly this secondary thing of the spinning Space Marine head, which is going to lag like crazy on the screen. Sorry. But people are saying that this probably looks like it belongs in the like Unreal Engine or something like that. So it's interesting to see how they're going to do it. I'm going to scroll back up to the sister before it annoys anyone else. So yeah, really, really interesting design. And it's good to see that with Hammer and Bolter, Angels of Death, and this whatever project, they're really going in different directions with Storyforge. So I really approve of that. Some good stuff, I must say. Right, then a bit more Sigmar happened. We got a giant tease, which was essentially the teaser trailer for the Sons of Behemat. Behemat being one of the god beasts from the Age of Myth and who played a prominent role in the Realmgate Wars early on in Age of Sigmar's life cycle. And the Sons of Behemat are the Gargants. So all of the giants that you see across the factions in the Mortal Realms, they are the Sons of Behemat. And they are now getting a battle tome. Kind of, you might want to say these are the Imperial Knights of Age of Sigmar, in terms of it will be a faction where everything is huge, everything is stompy, and everything can punch your face in. However, unlike Imperial Knights, I suspect that they won't be anywhere near as nuts, because in Destruction, which is where these guys belong, they don't have the same allying potential that the Imperial Knights do with the old Imperial soup and all of that other stuff. I think they'll be really interesting to play against as an all-monsters army, maybe with some other stuff. And they talk about some different unit variants in the trailer. So I'm interested to see where that goes. Now, some people are saying, like, can we see more, please? Why are we not seeing more? And this comes back to what I was saying at the beginning about this all was supposed to happen at once at Adepticon. Bear in mind that the Lumineth have been revealed. Compared to this show, the Lumineth were revealed yesterday. The Doom Cow was revealed yesterday, and the Sons of Behemat teaser is sort of the last thing at the end of the show. It would be very counterproductive for GW to have two major battle tome releases, both of whom are brand new factions, probably with brand new miniatures, being released in parallel with each other. They've released factions in parallel together, things like the Skaven and the Flesh Eater Courts. The Skaven were new, but getting no new miniatures. The Flesh Eater Courts were getting an update. The Sylvaneth came out on their own. The Ossiarch and the Ogres did come out together, but again, the Ogres were an update with no new models, and the Ossiarch were brand new. This is similar, but I think the Sons of Behemat are getting a lot of new stuff too. So I think it would be counterproductive to reveal them both and run them in parallel, because one would subtract from the hype of the other, and in the sense of if everything was running as normal, it would also subtract from the sales of each other because there's too much coming out at once. So I suspect that when things are back up and running, the Lumineth will come out, and then once that's been gone for about a month, so we'll have Lumineth release, wait a month, then we'll get Sons of Behemat, just so they don't stack the releases on top of each other, depending on what their sales practice is once the world starts reopening for business. We will see. And then we got one of the more controversial yet awesome elements of the show, the tease for Psychic Awakening 9, Pariah. So, again, really cool trailer here, where they dropped two new miniatures to coincide with the re-release of the 20th anniversary Demonifuge. We have miniature form of Ephrael Stern. Ephrael Stern is a very famous Sister of Battle from the Demonifuge graphic novel some 20 years ago. I don't know the exact plot of it off the top of my head, but she is very well known and very, very, very dangerous. So seeing her back is really cool, and she's got her Harlequin companion, whose name has gone out of my head, Kaiganil, that's it. And he looks really awesome. Both of them do, to be fair. Ephrael has got this real, I think Kirill talks about it in his video, this downward motion with everything billowing up, which looks great. And Kaiganil with the sort of the way the tiles are designed and the swords behind his back, he looks really, really cool. Both of them do. Great miniatures. And you've got here, that's the Ephrael Stern's second novel. That's the cover art for that, for Ephrael, which is really cool. And they're reissuing Demonifuge in full colour, which is pretty epic if you're a fan of Demonifuge. And even if you're not, if you're someone like me who's a lot too young to remember Demonifuge, then it's a really cool way to experience it, I suspect. However, these guys form... I'll go back up to the miniatures. These guys form the primary protagonists in Psychic Awakening 9. Now, Psycho 89, as I say, is called Pariah, and GW is passing off the term Pariah as a synonym for blank. It's close enough to say that they're a synonym for blanks, and definitely Kaiganil, I believe, is a blank. But with the name Pariah, I think everyone was expecting that Book 9 was going to feature the Necrons, because people have been looking for Necron Pariahs to come back ever since Necron Pariahs were retconned out of the game back in the 5th edition Change of the Necrons. And I admit I was too. I expected when we saw the FRL Stern trailer that we were going to get Sanctuary 101 Round 2 Electric Boogaloo. We're not getting that. In fact, I don't really know what we're getting, because the rules for Psychic Awakening 9 are as yet unclear. All we know is that Stern and Kaiganil are going to be there. But the rules that we are getting are for the Harlequins and Deathwatch, and they're going in White Dwarf. So actually, I remember seeing a bit of conversation about this, and I think Wade Price confirmed that Stern is in Psychic Awakening 9, and as far as they're telling us right now, the Deathwatch and Harlequins will be in White Dwarf, not in Psychic Awakening 9. Now, that's not confirmed. Do not take that as gospel, that Deathwatch and Harlequins are not in Psychic Awakening 9. It might be that they are, and they're just being fast-tracked out in White Dwarf so that we can get the rules for it in decent time in case the world stays on lockdown for a lot longer. But if it is the case that they're White Dwarf only, that feels a bit sour on Deathwatch and Harlequins players, because everyone else has got these elaborate books with hardback covers and new lore and a great big battle and all that stuff, and these guys get shoved in White Dwarf. That seems really unfair, and also would mean that the new rules for Deathwatch and Harlequins would be limited to 1 month's run. And we've seen with the Custode, with the Sisters of Silence in particular, their White Dwarf rules are probably getting rolled in to Psychic Awakening 8 as part of the Talons of the Emperor, meaning that those rules are going to be available on a permanent basis. So if it's just a 1 month run, and if you don't get it, you don't get the rules, that kind of sucks. So I'm hoping it's just a case that they're putting them out early so that Psychic Awakening 9 is not keeping everyone sort of waiting for ages, but I don't know. And if they aren't doing that, let's say that Deathwatch and Harlequins are not Psychic Awakening 9, who is Psychic Awakening 9? Are we actually getting Necrons and they're just keeping that under wraps for a bit longer because they don't want to conflict the hype with Fabius Bile? Because bear in mind, again, this was all supposed to happen in one weekend. I don't know. It's a bit weird. So it's a bit of a case of watch this space. Maybe they'll get some information in 2 weeks, but I doubt it because that's Adepticon Part 3. I guess we'll find out exactly what's going on with Psychic Awakening 9 and with Necrons in general. So, one to watch. Again, kind of like the Lumineth limited edition Battletome from earlier, one to watch. And finally, they have said here that if you are wanting to make some purchases from GW, obviously you can't right now, but if you buy a virtual gift voucher of £50 or your original equivalent, you get £5 additional, which in essence is spend 50, get 5 free, which is essentially spend 100%, get 10% extra for free, or go the other way, spend 55 quid, get a 9% discount. It's not great, but considering it's a GW discount, which is very, very rare, it's so totally fine with me. I think it's going to be useful. Does it apply to Forge World? I think it's just gamesworkshop.com rather than Forge World. So we'll see. But yeah, it's a nice thing as someone who does shop through GW quite often unless buying something specialist. Yeah, that's cool. And so we arrive at the end of the Warhammer Preview Online 2. And I have to say, if you take it on its own, as this was a big reveal that we've hyped up, it's a little bit disappointing because it gave us a grand total of, let's count them back through. How many new miniatures did we get in this show? 1, 2, let's get through all of this. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we got 7 miniatures and a starter box, but I'll just leave it on the Lumineth because they're pretty. So we got 7 miniatures and the reveal of a starter box, which contains miniatures we've already seen. As a standalone preview, it's a little bit dry and a bit flat, especially when you consider the show that was out last week, where you had the Lion, the Battle Cattle, Fabius Bile, and all of that good stuff. But if you consider this as this is part of the Adepticon reveals, then I think it suddenly makes a lot more sense. Because you can't have bombshell after bombshell after bombshell after bombshell after bombshell with ginormous reveals on each one. So I think it works in that context. I still think there was a little bit of miscommunication in terms of, oh, there's going to be a third show where we're going to do the specialist games, everybody. That could have been better communicated because we didn't know that. And now we're going to tune in on April the 18th to find out exactly what they're revealing there. And whether there's going to be a fourth show, we will see. But it's a nice set of reveals. It kind of feels like the addendum to the previous show of sort of, we ran out of time on the last show. Here's some extra heresy. Here's some extra AOS. And here's a little bit more 40k. I don't know. That's kind of what it feels like. But then again, as an addendum to an Adepticon show, I kind of get that. But that's just my thoughts. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you think this was a good reveal? Was it not so good? What do you think of the various reveals that have come out? What do you think? In general, I always like to see what you have to say. For now though, thank you for watching Tactica Imperialis. This has been my thoughts on the Warhammer Online Preview 2. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all again. Bye for now.